pleasure to be with you, to be socially distancing from thousands of miles away, so it is safe in this COVID-19 crazy world that we are entering. It's a next normal. We have a lot of new challenges, so for management, we will need to be able to adjust accordingly. And obviously we are, because we are doing it through the webinar, which is safe and secure. But it's unprecedented, unparalleled world that we live in, and we need to be able to recognize that. What I wanted to do today, I would like to spend a little bit of time to first describe the concepts of management, the concept of performance, use the measurements or metrics or analytics that we used to call today in this world of management. I will want to define a few definitions, give you a few definitions of the KPI, what that it means, what KPI stands for, what KPA stands for, what balanced scorecard is. I will give you a few names. I'll give you a number of names, actually, many of them, and I will not have time to really go over most of these names of the people, but I will want to encourage you and invite you to do some of your, to entice you and excite you to read more about those great thinkers of the 20th and 21st century in area of performance management. I will take a bird's eye view, telling you a little bit about the classical or origins of management, what management definition is. I will get to the current people like Jim Collins, Peter Drucker, and Clayton Christensen, the Harvard University professors. So we will be able to anchor this. John Kotter will be another one, Norton and Kaplan will be another ones. So I will tell you those names in the very brief way, because we have only so little time and we have so much to cover. So let me just begin with saying that the management is as ancient as the mankind itself. And the word manage, or manage, or in Latin word mane, comes from hand. To manage, it means to handle, to take control of things and to handle it. So management, in the simplest way, it means to be handling, to manage, to get things done. The Peter Drucker usually says that management is getting things done through other people and other means. Two basic elements. Performance is basically, it's like a sports game. The world that we live in could also be used as a metaphor, that the business is a metaphor for life, but more than that, it's a metaphor for doing activities like sports. It is scoring goals, scoring more profits. And the metaphor of performance is basically, essentially important to realize that you perform for the purpose. And the performing means that it is the proactive conscious activity. And from the ancient times, when we think about performance and management, it used to be that during the 18th, 19th century, Henri Fayol, who was born in Turkey, in Istanbul, he was a great French engineer, came with the analytical and scientific approach to management. And you may have obviously heard about these ideas, and here the 14 points. And it started with a simple, clear idea of what you want to do and direction of purpose, and the 14 things complete with the esprit de corps. And then the Frederick Taylor came with the measuring management and trying to measure motion and the activities of humankind. So we have moved from this very scientific way from this century and a half or more, that we came now to this new or modern new functions of management. And what are those four new functions of management? The management, in the shortest way, is a pillar. There are four pillars, and on the top, when you see the manager on the top of the triangle, and imagine that you have the Greek columns of the Colosseum, the pillars of that, and there are four pillars. One is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And you have heard of this because you know this and you have come across this. So Fayol's 14 points have been reduced to 4. Most recently, over the last decade or so, we talk about the 4 elements of 4 E's. We still continue accepting planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. We will discuss those more in details. But now, in modern way, we have 4 E's. 4E, letter E, what it means. The first letter is energize. In order to be a good manager, you have to have energy. You don't only handle things, but you have to have this contagious energy that you can fire up other people. So you become effective, you become efficient. Effectiveness and efficiency are those 2 words which are effectiveness is not including efficiency, because efficiency is a quantitative input-output ratio. So energizing. The second element of the contemporary or modern management requires that you empower people, give people power, meaning that you liberate employees. You do not control them like you used to do, which was those military system CCC, communicate, control, and command. Now you mean empowering by delegating. You trust that the employee will be more creative, more active, more able to really get things done when it is possible that he has a empowerment. The third one is the encouragement. Encouragement basically is mean providing the support, supporting environment, supporting with the necessary means and conditions to grow and to flourish. And engagement is nothing less and nothing more than communication. You engage by communicating, you transmit certain ideas, certain innovative new ways, as you can imagine that nowadays with the social media, with the internet, with the globalization in all swing, the engagement is the key, especially in areas of marketing, management, and contemporary business. So that's a very quick bird's eye view of the 4 pillars of management that were distilled from the 14 points of FIO. The key people, the key names that you need to remember, and we don't have time to go through them, will be people that you have to spend some more time to do is people like Peter Drucker. He's often named or mentioned as the founding father of management, of modern management. And he lived 94 years. He died in 2005. He was a very prolific author. One of his most seminal book was the 1954 Practice of Management. That was it's still a very important book. And I would encourage you to read it. Another very important book was in 70s that he wrote a book called Innovation and Management. And it was a book that has been also talking about how the new world is changing from the production to the knowledge intensive worker. So he coined the word knowledge worker, the person who nowadays has to be skilled and trained and knowledgeable and to be able to be agile and work in many different environments. So the main things about also the idea of performance management is that the change is inevitable in today's world. There is John Kotter at Harvard University who has written a number of books about change management. He told the anecdote that either you change or you perish. If you do not change, you are going to be stagnating. The management requires that you are able to start with the ability to be active, to be able to be using the driving forces to your benefit. And he talks about the threats and opportunities. And threats are that there is a growing local competition. There is a speed that is increasing. There's also international competition. But those threats are also creating us more opportunities. So there is the bigger markets that we can capture. There is the lowering barriers. And there is more international markets that we can actively participate. So how do you lead change? You lead change by re-engineering. And re-engineering is something that you have all idea taken anew and tweak a little bit and adjust to current contemporary world. And what it is, it means that you are using the teamwork, which is a horizontal organization, but you also use the capability to use networks. Networking is the key in the buzzword in 21st century. You need to be finding—
Professor Mark,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Apparently, I'm not sure if you are still ready to move the slides because we are still on the title slide. I mean, I'm not sure if you're still on the background introductory page.
So I'm going through these definitions for the moment. So
Okay, sure. Because some people were asking, I just wanted to make sure.
okay,
Sorry,
good, good.
please.
Yeah, we'll go through this. We have 30 slides. I hope, Ali, that you can make this presentation, the slides available to anybody who wants to do it. And you can post it, so it'll be no problem. But I'm giving a little bit extra, some of the notes that I use in my classes, so that it'll be possible for you to see the key names of the people that you need to know. So John Kotter, he has come up several years ago with a book at Harvard called Accelerate. It was letter X, 8 and rate, accelerate. It is a very interesting book because he talks about the 8 stages model of change. He says that first stage is that you use the sense of urgency. Then you have a building of powerful coalition. Third is the developing of great vision. And the fourth is that you spread this vision widely. The fifth is again empowerment. 6 is getting short run wins. 7, you keep urgency. You have to be all the time agile and be able to be feeling urgent, and make change as a stick. You make change inevitable because the change is inevitable. However, growth is optional. Change is inevitable. Pantare, we hear from this from the Greek times, that everything flows and that there is no way to really stop it. AI stands not only for artificial intelligence, which nowadays with blockchain and with all the new technologies that the innovations and the artificial intelligence does, but AI in John Kotter's language means appreciate inquiry. It means have a curiosity. New managers are very curious. They engage individuals, teams, and everybody in the organization. So now the teamwork comes in place. You create change. You do it by positive images, by focusing on continuous learning and small wins and small graduals, infinitesimal type of improvements. The leading major change has 4 dimensions. And the 4th dimension, it is important to remember the 4 Ds. 4 Ds is the 4-dimensional change. So first, you start with the discovery. You discover and you identify and you appreciate what is the best in you as a person and what you are. This is the nothing new but the Socratic 2,500 years ago when he says, echote ipsum, know yourself. If you know yourself, you know what you discover, what you are appreciating, what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You are best able to fit, to contribute to companies. So you are able to be much more productive. Second is you start with the dreaming. Dream means that you can imagine what could it be in the company that could be better. You come to the place with a new eye. And Einstein used to always say that, you know, that change comes mostly with a breakthrough, is always break with. The breakthrough is only possible because somebody comes and sees the situation in the company, in the organization, and is able to disagree with what happens with the status quo and changes the status quo. And most of the time, these are not the people who are highly most intelligent. Ignorance is the bliss. Sometimes someone doesn't know about the things, how difficult they are, and he tweaks something and changes it. The third is this element of the design. What should it be and how could it be done? We're designing new things. And then you are having a 4th element of change in corporation is when you are creating your new destiny. What will be for the future? So the future is nothing else than the present, which is only just a few moments away from us. And now I'd like to also talk about the key elements of the strategic planning. Strategic planning basically is 2 key words. Strategos in Greek means game plan. It's a plan of war. Strategy and plan. Plan, what is the meaning of plan? Plan, it means that you have a certain scenario of wish, your imagination, what you want to desire, what you want to achieve, and you are planning, and you know this here, you hear it all the time, that people who do not, who fail to plan, they plan to fail. In other words, you have to be planning things, because without planning, you are not able to do anything. And the simplest way that Stephen Covey talks about is the 80-20 rules. It's the ability to spend first 1 hour, you plan your activities and you visualize your activities. What will you happen it down on the paper, and it's called what Peter Drucker calls MBO, managing by objectives. And then when you have a list of things, you check it out and you're able to describe your goals, your objectives, your destination, and you see what are the difficulties, and you select approaches, how to move forward. So goal of strategic planning is to allocate your resources to provide organization with competitive advantage. Planning purpose is that you need to be able to define organization identity. You know, this is what Jim Collins, this famous American management expert, he's still only just in the late 50s or 60s. He was a very successful MIT and Harvard professor. He went to Boulder, Colorado, has written many interesting books, like, for instance, Good to Great, Build to Last. And he talks about that the purpose of planning is to see what business are you in. He repeats what Peter Drucker used to always say. The key questions that any manager, any business person, any successful performance manager is able to do is to say, what business are you in? If you really, this is what is also called core competence. This is defining their identity. You prepare for the future. You're able to adapt and change environment. You're able to focus and allow better allocation of your resources. You organize a culture and cooperate. Culture is a key word in the 21st century. The key, because without understanding culture, nuances, we are not able to achieve most of the goals, because now we live in a shrink world, which is a very small global village. And the thing is that the culture is dominating. If you do not understand the culture, you will fail. Then you have to use also consideration for adopting options for opportunities and provide employees with information on your daily activities. The relationship between organization level and individual level goals, then there is a disjoint. There is a need to link the strategic planning with individual goals. So it's another new word in 21st century. It's called alignment. It is empowering, aligning the individual goals with the strategic goals. How do you align strategic plan with performance? So organization strategic planning is basically critical to involve at all levels. And it starts with this, what I like to call MVV, which is mission, visions, and goals. Because goals and strategy, you will be achieving these goals. And at the organizational level, mission is very important, because mission, what is mission? Mission is the raison d'être, as French say, reasons of being in the business. Vision is how you want to see yourself in 10, 20, 30 years from now on. And the vision of the business means that you are visualizing yourself, how you perform in the new environment, in the new scenario that you are in. And you are able to visualize all the possibilities. Goals and strategies are the basically tactics and what you achieve. And the job description in the organization requires that you know your task, you know key strategic activities, the actions that needs to be taken, because individuals and team performance is resulting from the behavior and from the plan that you develop. So in a recent study, which was about 340 organizations in 40 countries, they found performance management as the third most important factor affecting success in strategic actions. So you need to be linking among organization, unit strategic, and describing individual's team. The good example is the Bank of Utah, who is able to link the organization and describing what job description every team member has. And they do it by having the mission statement. And mission statement basically is the idea that corporation is to operate in high-performing financial institutions and giving a range of competitive and superior financial services. Goals and strategy, we already mentioned. These are the branches of developments that ensure that they are consistent with goals to be able to get the profit. What is a mission? I say it's a knowledge management and the decision-making abilities that it will be able to minimize the losses. Position description for human resource management. It means you administer a comprehensive human resource program and you ensure expertise and activities. You include providing appropriate management succession to staff members. The key to the performance management is the individual performance. Individual performance is the ability to be able to take responsibility. And what is the word responsibility? There are two words: able to respond. You're able to respond, you're responsible that someone asks you, your boss, your manager, your leader tells you what are the expectations, what are the goals, and you're able to respond and you're performing so that you not only create the future, you shape the future, but you are able to follow the successful steps. So the idea of the steps is that you get from the environmental analysis, you go through this mission, vision, values, goals, and strategies, or those are the necessary tools and technique. And one of the environmental analysis most effective tool is the SWOT analysis, which was developed already in the 60s by Mr. Andrews. It was refined by many people. Some people say that it was Alfred Kandler at Harvard who wrote the strategy follows the structure. That's the title of the book. He says that you need to identify external and internal trends. You need to understand industry issues, and you have to see the big picture. And in external trends, you look at the opportunities, you look at threats, you look at the factors like social, economic, political. They call it PEST: political, economic, social, technological, and legal. They, of course, call it sometimes pestle, sleep, staple. So there are many versions. You've heard of this probably. The internal strength and weaknesses are the things. What am I good at this? That is, what is the advantage that you have? What are the weaknesses? What do you need to improve? And here are the 5 factors that you need to do. The gap analysis is essential because it analyzes an external environment and internal environment. So these are opportunity and strengths. Sometimes another way of looking at SWOT is you turn it around and you look at these TOWs, which means threats, opportunities, strengths and weaknesses. And gap analysis is the key because when you synthesize, you synergize, and synergy is the idea that 1 + 1 is 3, means opportunity and strength gives you leverage. You are having advantage. When you have opportunity, weakness, you are just having a constraint. When you have a threat and strength, you have vulnerability. You are very able to be attacked from someone. But when you have a threat and weakness, you are creating a problem. So strategy planning on organization is that who they are and what do they do. We already mentioned this. Mission, we talked about what is the organization purpose of being and who are the customers. Mission statement, you will need to look at this because I'm running out of time, so I'm leaving you as a buzzword. Vision, I already mentioned, is the state of the future and which aspirations that you want to be remembered by. And purpose of setting goals, we've mentioned already that it is ability to be providing the customers with their required ability to be satisfied. And I need to also take a few moments to say a little bit about Peter Drucker, because I really like what Peter Drucker said about the new way of looking at the world today. He says that nowadays, when you look at this management, you are changing, you are moving from maximizing shareholders' returns to putting customers first. What does it mean? That shareholders, what Milton Friedman in 60s and 70s until 80s used to be that the main responsibility in business was profitability, bringing profit. Nowadays, you have to have putting customer first. Second, you have to have a movement from hierarchy bureaucracy to collaborative. And the third, from narrow financial metrics to measuring of prosperity. Let me get into those key performance indicators and what are the, starting with the 5 best tools for performance management. One, you need to be, I mentioned this and we've hopefully agreed that you have to start with a goal framework. That's numero uno. Your vision, mission, and values. What business are you in? What are your goals? What are your objectives? What are your objectives clearly defined? And what is the cascade of objectives? You have to be from top down, you have to be ranking them from 1 through 5 or whatever. Then what are the definition of metrics of KPI? What are the key that you need really to measure? Because key performance indicators talk about the keys, which means that you cannot have too many. So you also have to, for the 4th element, you have to have a regular performance and discussions. You not only have it once a year, as used to be the performance evaluation was related to the person. No, the performance evaluation is related now to everything that is related to the business, because Japanese have perfected this with a Kaizen, continuous improvement. In 70s, 80s, and 90s, they were incredibly conscientious developing the teamworks, and they were amazingly able to empower everybody who came with new ideas, and they were considering every idea was worth 5 minutes of fame or 5 minutes of consideration. And the fifth, of course, is a reward and recognition system. And then it is different than it used to be, that when you work for 30 years in the company, you got a watch at the time when you did not need the watch, right? Nowadays, rewards are the badges, employee of the week, employee of the month, the role model, the person who has come with most ideas. And this reward system recognition is sometimes, people say, more important than monetary recognition, because we nowadays do not crave, we are not such a in poverty-stricken society as 50 years ago or more. So what is balanced scorecard? It's a strategic management component system. It is the system that helps an organization to set strategic goals, and it helps a company, an organization, to define action plans. That is what is needing to deliver. What are the strategic goals? So company is delivering and developing key performance indicators, which are the metrics, which are the ways of measurement. And the one of them, in the way that we can take, is the 4 perspectives. There are 4 key perspectives. One is the financial goals, customer goals, internal process, learning and growth objectives. And when you look at those 4 perspectives, you look at this from the financial as a perspective, financial perspective. The focus is the financial performance. And the key example of key performance indicators is something like return on investment, increasing profitability. When you increase profitability, you know that you're doing pretty well. And one of the good definition of profit is not only money, but it's applause that you're doing something right in business. And the more competition you get, the good sign it is. That's why you need to be constantly innovative. And another key performance indicator may be cost reduction or inventory control. So that's the first perspective, the financial perspective. Second is the customer approach. Customer approach is basically making sure that the customers are satisfied. How they are satisfied? You use the analytics or metrics. You do this by finding the level of items are returned in the store. The more there are item returns, the more they are dissatisfied. So it means that there are false or faulty products, or this don't bring satisfaction. So the customer satisfaction brings the satisfaction when there is a small return of the products or complaints on the services. Then the retaining of the customer is one of the key performance indicators. How do you retain? By building loyalty, by giving them constant reward. When you come a few times to Starbucks, after 4, 5, 6 times, you get one free. You go to store, you buy certain things, you get a loyalty by giving them something that you are continuously buying, and they know that having the satisfied customer is more important than finding new one. The ratio is something like a 1,000 to 1, because if you win one person and it stays, that's what Peter Drucker used to say, that the purpose of business is not only to create a customer, but to not to sell the product, but to buy a customer. When I say I'm bought, it means I will do everything possible to get this very tasty tea or coffee or milk or whatever what it is. So that's a customer satisfaction.
Professor Mark, sorry to interrupt once again. Audience is asking if you are actually showing the screen of KPIs or you're just reading the introduction, because we are seeing a different screen.
Yes, I'm just reading it because I haven't been able to add everything. So I can.
Yeah, kindly, if you could mention in your presentation talk, because I get flooded of notes that slides are not moving the moment you start reading.
Yes, yes, because.
Yeah.
So we've talked about.
Fair enough. I didn't want to interrupt. Please proceed, because there were a number of queries coming for slides transitions.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is that. We talked about the turnaround, stability, innovation, leadership. Those are strategies I mentioned to you. That balanced scorecard essentially has 4 perspectives. Internal process means that the business effectiveness and efficiency, how the new product lead time is, how long does it take, and what are the costs of doing this. And also the last thing is of the organization capacity is a high human resources functions. which means that you need to be communicating this knowledge, your strategic plan. You provide knowledge to the key strategic actions that are needed for strategy implementation, and you are proposing the reward system. We mentioned this, the reward system may not necessarily be only dealing to the monetary, pecuniary or financial, but it can be also recognition, awards, and other sort of rewards, like going for the extra training and getting a special recognition and additional things. So what are the advantages of balanced scorecard? The advantages of the balanced scorecard is you're talking about the performance management as a criteria. So one of the criteria is behavior versus result. The advantages of performance management through the balanced scorecard is that it gives you the broader view of business perspective. You see the bigger picture, you expand your horizons, you have a better links between measurements and the long terms of mission, vision, and values. You also have more flexibility, and you are able to have a better participation. When you have a low participation, it means that the morale is very low. When you have a high participation, there is a motivation. People are enthusiastic. And I told you about all these 4 elements of new ways of looking at the new functions of performance management: empowerment, engagement, encouraging, energizing. When you look at the temporal dimension, it means that you look at the short-term versus long-term goals. And then again, it relates to the mission and vision. When you have a short-term, the short-term is defined something with the 1 to 3 months. Long-term is year up to 5-year terms. And when you have a criteria of whether individuals are actually satisfied in the company or not, this is Henry Mintzberg idea about this employees X and Y's, where some people are considered not very motivated, and then they might be considered lazy, but then idea is that they're consumers or producers and employees and managers who are very active. They see the value of being very much working together in team and group. And nowadays there is a matrix. You create a matrix between working with each other. So you have to look at the system orientation of a developmental versus administrative. You have to be developing the organization in such a way that you will be improving it. Administration usually looks at the very rigid constraining forms, because whatever management is giving you as a directive or rules, it limits your activities. And then performance versus tenure position. So how do you build support? What is it for me? In care of a top management, you are helping carry out vision. And as I mentioned to you, whenever there is no vision, people perish. I know that in Quran, there must be some equivalent of this, because it's taken from the ancient wisdom. Where there is no people, where there is no vision, people perish. And that is inevitable. You have to have a development vision. And visualization is something that can be learned. Visualization can be actually produced through ability of our exercise daily and consistently. And one of the ways is to try to visualizing by ideation. You come with the idea to the company and you bring this idea during staff meetings and you say, imagine what would happen if. And then you to be able to have a higher involvement, higher participation, and increase bigger understanding of the company. I think I have covered the most critical parts that I wanted to tell you, and I'd be delighted to give you some time to answer your questions and be able to respond to your critical concerns and your considerations. So I do thank you. It's already on my watch. It's more than 1 hour that we've been talking. So I do apologize that I've talked too much, but I'm now very happy to respond to any type of questions that you may have. So thank you so much for your attention. Please ask any kind of questions. And if I don't know something, I will tell you I don't know, and I can return to you by sending you an email.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So Professor, we are ready for the Q&A.
Go ahead.
Okay, folks, thank you very much, Professor, for an interesting presentation. Once again, my apologies, our apologies for the little transition over the slide deck, as we were having some technical glitches initially, but we managed to fix it in the MS Word, so there were some transition issues. In the meantime, let's move to the question and answers. So you have the option to either insert your questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat box. If I would appreciate if you could put them in the Q&A box, or you could equally raise your hand. Once you raise your hand, we will be able to unmute you so you can have an audio conversation with the professor. So let me go to the question box. There are a couple of them already posted. One from brother Osama Mansoor. Professor, what are the new challenges related to the COVID-19 pandemic?
The new challenges for the COVID-19, you see that the McKinsey report, which is I find one of the most interesting and insightful company in the world, McKinsey says that we live in the next normal. The new challenges will be for the next year or maybe even longer, will be to adjust to this limiting of our ability to interact. That's one of the physical problems, which we have found in a way amazingly to be able to use the Zoom and you use through the social distancing to be able to limit some of the difficulties. But one of the biggest challenge will be to still continue to be innovative, to be more integrating some of the current thinking into the way what the challenges bring to us. Because nowadays, when you are seeing that many businesses, particularly the services, are suffering most. And it is paradox, it's an irony that in the world, when the world is moving from this traditional, the feudal, agricultural, industrial sector to service-oriented sector. For instance, in United States, you know that there is in 90%, the whole economy is based on the service sector. Everything is provided to the service, is now suffering most. And the problems with going to the places where you gather, like airports, restaurants, or theaters, sports, they have been limited and they have been suffering most. Most of the people who have been suffering are those service-oriented sectors and the small businesses. Ironically or paradoxically, the big corporations are doing extremely well. Why? Because they have a huge amount of capital, and the capital that they are able to exercise are able to move their products still in a very safe way. So that's one of the key salient features of the challenges that we are facing in this 21st century with COVID. It has redefined the rules of the games. It has made things much more difficult, but in some ways, when you notice the grounding down 75–85% of airline industry has caused that the other means of transportation and other means of communications have been increasing. So the virtual reality that we see, or augmented reality that we see, that we are increasingly witnessing, and decline of the use of petroleum and the standards of the conventional transport has been replaced by the virtual reality. And I think that the world is moving to this virtual reality. We are witnessing, I don't have to be traveling to your country to be able to have the seminar. I'm pretty happy being able to have to drink my own tea here and talking to you. So the benefits and costs are always available because of the new changes, and the new environment creates like the SWOT: strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The threats are imminent because disease is clear. There are people who are affected, there are people who are dying. There are talks, Oxford is talking about by late October, there will be already new vaccine. I just read that in Russia, they have come up with a vaccine which World Health Organization criticized that it has not worked together with them. So there are a lot of challenges. I think we could go on and on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And folks, may I request once again for the questions, if you could kindly post your questions in the Q&A box. There's a Q&A box available on your console. That makes us easier for us as moderator to sequence and order them to ask directly to the professor. So on the chat, it becomes a little cluttered and we have to scroll down and pick the questions answers. But in the Q&A box, it's easier for us to pick it up. Anyhow, let us move to the question box. We have another one from Brother Abdul Aziz Al-Hali. Professor, some may say that balanced scorecard is theoretically fine, but could have challenges when implemented, especially if done on a large scale. What are your views?
I agree, because, you know, balanced scorecard has not only advantages, but it also has some drawbacks. You know, one is that you are maybe prone to be using too many performance indicators. And that's not good, because if you're, you know, you can, that's what it's called, it's a paralysis by analysis. You can be overly analyzing things, and then you forget that at the end of the day, the action, the customer satisfaction, the triple bottom line, which is people, planet, and profit are the key. So danger of using too many KPIs is one of the drawbacks. The other one is that you need to have the balance between those 4 perspectives that I mentioned to you, which is not easy. It's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. And senior management may be still too concerned with financial perspective, focusing on profits, which is natural for business. And it needs to be more updated regularly to be useful. And you have to use social media. You have to be using disruptive innovation, which Clayton Christensen talked about. That disruptive innovation means that you create new industry, new markets. And Jim Collins talked about the BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals. You have to have always goals that are higher than you have done before. And Peter Drucker talks about the continually learning and observing the reality. Knowledge worker, KW, that's what is the key. I don't know, did I answer the question?
Oh, fair enough. Thank you very much. We have another one from Brother Khalid Babazid. The question is it a must to put change plan in association of strategic plan for an organization?
Of course, yes, that's a very good question. Yeah, you know, as we mentioned, you change or perish. If you do not change, if you do not innovate, if you do not get new things, better things, more effective, more economical, more attractive, you know that the one of the amazing things is that when you look at this Nescafe coffee, which is, what is it, Swiss company that started years ago. The secret of their success is that they are selling the same type of coffee, except that they always have this 3-letter word, N-E-W, new. And what is new? Same old taste, but new packaging or new design. We like newness, so you need to be, the change is the constant. The only thing that is remaining constant is change. It is also, of course, a paradox, but you need to be changed. You need to be employing the change. You have to be changing, because the change is inevitable. Growth is optional, but if you do not change, there is no such a thing as status quo. Status quo, which means that you think you will be staying at the 15% of your profitability. That's not possible, because you will be overrun by the world. Next.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. And we have a few callers who have raised a hand. Let's move to the attendees who have raised a hand. First, Brother Hasim Al-Najjar. Brother, could you please introduce yourself and ask a question?
Okay. My voice is clear?
Yes, we can hear you. Please introduce yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, my name is Hazim Al-Najjar. I'm calling from Saudi Arabia. And I'm part of Middle East Center for Strategic and Law Studies. My question to Professor Mark, first, I would like to thank him for this great lecture. And do you think, or do you agree that the future of performance reviews is now shifting from accountability to learning?
Exactly. You just got in the bullseye. Perfect. Thank you. A few months ago, there was at the IMF, at the Washington, there was Thomas Friedman, who wrote the book, World is Flat Now, and thank you for being late. Some of these great books that he wrote. He said that the performance evaluation of employees has to move and has been moving over the last number of years by big corporations from, rather than giving them critical review of saying, what are your expectations in the company? What are your ambitions? What are your goals? And what do you expect? And then without telling the employee, and asking them question what the person expects, if the person says, look, I would like to invest in the more knowledge, I'd like to take more courses, I'd like to be taking more learning tools to be able to perform better. Those are the signals that the manager knows that that is the worth retaining, that the employees are worth keeping. And then they have 3 years period, which is unwritten rule, but if the employee gets into the company and for 3 years is not taking initiative, is not taking employment seriously, is not taking extra classes, is not taking investing in the knowledge, this person after 3 years is being said, okay, you can leave the company. But the person who has taken initiative, has asked for, the companies, especially the big ones, have tens of thousands of dollars that they can pay for the courses that the employee takes, which is a wonderful way, which is a good way to really see inside of the person, whether the person is passive or proactive. Great question, thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Thank you very much, Brother Hazem, for an excellent question. Let me move to another caller. We have Brother Hussam. Brother Hussam, if you can hear us, could you please unmute yourself and
hello, hi. Do you hear me or no?
Yes, we can hear you. Could you please introduce and ask a question?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Hussam Al-Salim. I'm from Saudi Arabia.
Thank you.
Actually, I have a question about if we have the new project, let's say as a government, it is one of initiative in the government project. So it is better if we hiring strategy planning, or we only enough with the PMO, project management officer, to build the strategy for the initiative.
Are you asking if it is better to involve the consultant?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, usually, the advantage of hiring a consulting company or individual or expert is that you have two things that are there. First is something that you do not have time to do, you delegate. That's one of the clear and imminent advantage. And the second, it is a very natural and normal way. So I don't mean to be cynical, but it is a good way to find if something goes wrong, you blame to the consultant. One of the functions of consultant is that if something goes wrong, you can say, we have tried, we have consulted with this company or this consulting firm, and this is what they promised, but they didn't deliver. Well, but without this joke aside,
yeah, of course,
contribution has always useful role to play, because it's always good to have somebody who comes from the outside and is looking with the fresh eyes. One of the great things that Peter Drucker used to say, that his advantage of being a consultant and advisor was that he was very much looking with a fresh eye without being bogged down. He has a perspective, the person from the outside looking inside. So that is a very important and very valuable lesson, because when you get people who can contribute, who have been spending years and years on developing matrix or analytical tools, analytics and so on, and in today's world, which is very much rapidly changing, it is very important.
I see. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brother Hussam. It's interesting, or rather a coincidence, that all attendees who have raised a hand, their name starts with an H. We had Hasim, Hussam, and now we have Hamza Al-Shaif. So let me see. Yes, Brother Hamza, could you please introduce yourself and ask the question?
Hello, this is Hamza Sharif from Saudi Arabia also.
Hello.
So my question is regarding to the strategy implementation approaches. So we know that there are many approaches like balanced scorecard, Hoshin-Kearney, co-ORIs. So how can I know which one is most fit to my organization?
Well, you know, with all these tools, the key question is using the right tool for the right problem, right? So KPIs are metrics that help you to achieve business goals, but you know, you cannot be using the pencil to perform the operation on the brain, right? You need to have a surgical tool. So the key questions is, if you define the problem clearly, you're able to realize what corresponds to that question. So formulating the question is very difficult, but it's a very important, because once you formulate the question, it gives you at least the half, if not more, of the more than 50% of the answer. Because with asking the right questions, you are able to use the proper tool. So key performance indicators, the key in this KPI is the key. It has to be such a key that opens the door, the key that unlocks the problem and then gives you the solution. So you need to be able to use this simple aggregates of being able to utilize them. So this would be the way of handling it. I would say that you need to also use the filtered or calculated performance indicators. So you can find it nowadays on the internet, many of the things that we're inundated. You can always find already number of answers to the questions that you have, and then you can be more educated, and then you choose and select what will be the time frame, what will be the cost implication, and what will be also the level of satisfaction from how many of your tools you use. So there is no such a thing in 21st century that one tool or one set fits all. We are customizing and we are co-creating. And I think that one of the great things that Daniel Pink, when he wrote a book, To Sell is Human, he wrote this book saying that you have to be ABC, always be ABC, always be creative, being able to find the solution which is best fitted for the given problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for asking the question. And let me see, we have another caller with raised hands. We have Mr. Fawad, Brother Fawad Hussain. Brother Fawad Hussain, could you please introduce yourself? And if I may ask, just be precise in your questions. And Doctor, if you can give us a short answer, because we have a number of people who are still waiting.
Yes, I just quickly add, with all due respect to Professor Mark, with his permission, I would add to the answer of question to the Hussam, who asked about having a consultant or having a department and EPMO. My name is Mohammad Fawad Hussain, and I'm a strategy execution head at Al-Kifah Group. So the question is, yes, it's always good to have a fresh eye, but that also depends on the scope, what scope EPMO is handling. If EPMO is handling only initiative, then probably a consultant will be able to help them in a limited framework. Addition to that, the strategy is a continuous improvement process. Yes, it is defined for the period of time, but it is subject to continuous review. Now, we defined the strategy in 2019 for next 3-4 years. But in 2020, we had to go back and redo the whole strategy, keeping in view the pandemic. So I would, with all due respect to Professor Mark, I think this is, and there are different approaches to look at it, but having a right strategy and the right resource who can look into the strategy and who can modify and update the strategy as per the changing environment or as per the crisis or the economical condition, because it's subject to continuous review and improvement. That's what I wanted to add. I hope I'm making sense.
Well, I agree with you. Thank you. This is a great clarification. I can only add one liner of the President Eisenhower, who was a military, he was a general. He was talking, because you are mentioning about how do you prepare for unpreparable. He says that the planning is everything, but plan is nothing. What did he mean? He says that the process of planning, using contingencies, trying to anticipate unanticipable, using the clearly visualizing elements that they are not able easily to be anticipated, are essential. But once you write it down on a piece of paper, you have a plan, it becomes useless. He says that anytime that you are doing the planning, it's incredibly important. You're trying to anticipate something that you cannot anticipate, but we cannot have all the contingencies and all this unknown that you can be able to utilize. There are many unknowns. There are known unknowns, unknown unknowns, and there are those who are unknowns that are unknowns. So it is very difficult, but the more you're agile, the more you're innovative, the more you're anticipating various scenarios, and the scenarios building is important, the more you're able to be predicting the future. And Peter Drucker used to say that the best way to predict the future is to create it. How do you create it? Is by implementing the scenarios that you are being able to anticipate, and you have these cases where you are experimenting with them, and then you are able to adjust, because many things are flexible, but there are only always few things that are constant or fixed. So that's great comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor, for further elaboration. And now we have another caller. I think we are pressed on time, and but let's take one more call from Brother Ayad Al-Fatay. Brother, could you please introduce yourself and ask the question?
Hi, how are you doing? Iyad Hudayl from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I'm the head of strategy in one organization, Colleges of Excellence. The thing is, I think strategy, and specifically strategy management office, is really underserved, and the role is not really clear to some. And I heard from different questions here that they don't know the role, and they may say that initiatives or project management has a more powerful role. Well, integrating it to strategy, yes, it will execute the strategy if you've done it properly. But my question is regarding the planning itself. If I'm planning for a strategy, and then I'm going to translate it into a balanced scorecard, for example, what is the best way to plan for a strategy if I have different scenarios? Like, for example, my company needs to change its focus, and I need to make a turnaround, then a growth strategy. So what's the best approach to transition from one aspect to another? I hope it was clear.
It is clear. It is a very good question. It is very good question, which is not very easy to be answering, because the clear strategy, as you said, is something that you obviously would have very much thought about, prepared, anticipated, reflected, verified by reality. And the world and the life is always having a huge element of something that is unanticipatable. You cannot anticipate everything, because that would be a computer. Only in a computer simulation, things are perfectly coming out as you pre-program them. Reality and the life, therefore, is so much richer and more complicated, because there are things that you cannot anticipate. But the best way and the best tool to be able to answer the challenges and unknowns is essentially to be prepared for the unpreparable, to have in your portfolio lots of possible scenarios given, because at the end of the day, the things can be good, can be bad, and can be ambiguous. And the good are the things that we desire. Bad, we want to eliminate. And ambiguous is what is the life about. And if we could predict everything properly, then there would be, you could program it and you could use the, like prefabricated products and services and so on, and package it and distribute it. That's one of the things that actually augmented the reality that is more and more popular. I teach in China. I used to be going twice a year. Now I have not been able to because of the COVID. But what I was very much impressed is that they are, in fact, utilizing the augmented reality to see how much more you can keep under control. There is a lot of things which are fixed, but there's a lot of things that are beyond your control. The secret in a great performance of the management is that you are able to really control more things and be able to feel that you have an ability to affect them for the better by knowing what are the positive results. And innovation, inventions, and ability to be disruptive innovator are those key answers. And that is a very good question. And I don't, unfortunately, have a very good complete answer, because if I knew, I wrote a book about it, I would be either incredibly wealthy, or it will be something that will be everybody saying, here is the golden key that opens all the problems. But I commend you for the very challenging and very difficult questions, but I cannot answer to your satisfaction, because I myself don't have a complete answer, because this is beyond scope.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I just one thing. I think that lots of people don't have the full spectrum on the OSM and how it affects the organization, how the role of the Office of Strategy Management is actually really crucial, how to translate strategy. So I think maybe it would be good if it would be incorporated in one of these sessions.
Yes.
Thank you very much for answering the questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you, brother, for a very, very interesting question and quite a interactive engagement we had on this question. So thank you very much. And with that brings us towards the end. Any quick concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss out Professor Mark? Yes, Professor Mark, I'm requesting you if you have any quick concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss out.
Well, if I thought that you were asking somebody else. I do want to both thank you and express my gratitude and appreciations. I'm very privileged to be with the GPMA. It's a world premier organization, so I'm grateful. And I enjoyed your questions, and I hope I didn't bore you too much to the answering the difficulties, but wish you all the best. And I would like to be able to meet in the near future to continue with a topic that you can suggest.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Mark. And I really want to thank you on behalf of the GPMA Global Performance Management Academy for taking the time to deliver this excellent presentation. And hopefully we'll be able to keep you engaged based on the number of questions. And thank you for attendees for attending this webinar. Our apologies for not taking all the questions as we were pressed on time. And before we conclude, I would like to hand over to our founder and CEO, Dr. Mohamed Mustafa Mahmoud, who's formerly called Dr. 3M. I will give you a quick introduction about what we are doing at GPMA, as we had a number of questions, particularly about the KPIs, and we are running a number of courses, certification programs on performance management, strategic planning, and overall enterprise planning and performance management. So over to you, Dr. Mohamed Mustafa.
Thank you so much, Ali. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank Professor Mark Michalski for a very inspiring presentation. And we really look forward to have you again, join us in this series. I would like just to make a short announcement in Arabic, if you don't mind, Mark and other non-Arabic speaking guests. أهلا وسهلا بكم. بس حبيت أعلن إن الأكاديمية العالمية لإدارة الأداء. Do you see the slide, Ali?
Yes, sir, we are seeing it.
Okay. So the Global Performance Management Academy في موقعها كندا منظمة عالمية الحمد لله بتدشن لأول مرة باللغة العربية الشهادة الدولية لممارس التخطيط الاستراتيجي وإدارة الأداء المعتمد. الدفعة الجديدة إن شاء الله هتبدأ في لمدة شهر كامل، تبدأ في 5 سبتمبر إن شاء الله لغاية آخر شهر أكتوبر. هذه الشهادة تتضمن كورسين. الكورس الأولاني أنا آسف اللي هو التحليل الاستراتيجي وصياغة الاستراتيجية. ده كورس موجود على منصة أودمي، طبعا فيه محاضرات حية. الكورس ده عبارة عن جزئين: التحليل الاستراتيجي، كل التولز اللي ذكرها مارك زي البيستل والجاب اناليسيز والسوات اناليسيز والميشن والفيجن، كل ده بيتغطى هنا. وبعدين كورس تاني على استخدام البالانس سكور كارد. الاثنين مع بعض بيؤهلوا لشهاده في التحليل الاستراتيجي وصياغه الاستراتيجيه. الكورس الثاني مؤشرات قياس الاداء، عباره عن 3 مستويات. المستوى الاول بس عباره عن 13 ساعه زي ما انتم شايفين تحت، موجوده على اودمي، واخده ريتنج 4.7 اوت اوف 5. حوالي 1000 شخص اعطوا هذا الريتنج من 11,000 شخص مسجلين في هذا الكورس. لما تخلص مؤشرات قياس الاداء في ايضا شهاده. اللي يستكمل التخطيط الاستراتيجي ومؤشرات قياس الاداء يحصل على الشهاده الدوليه لممارس التخطيط الاستراتيجي واداره الاداء المعتمد. الماتيريال يعني بيزد على خبره عمليه كبيره جدا. انا اسف، فعشان كده في حالات عمليه كتيره جدا موجوده. بغض النظر عن القطاع اللي انت موجود فيه، بالتاكيد هتلاقي امثله من القطاع بتاعك. اللي بيشارك في البرنامج بياخد اكسس ل5 كورسات على منصه اودمي، اكسس مدى الحياه لحوالي 50 ساعه فيديو موجودين على المنصه. دي ال5 كورسات. ايضا قوالب باوربوينت كامله مفتوحه، اوبن تمبلتس، علشان تعمل الخطه الاستراتيجيه الخاصه بيك. كل النماذج المستخدمه دي هتكون ايضا متاحه للمشاركين، كومبليت سيت اوف تمبلتس اديتابل يعني. وبعدين طبعا هيبقى في محاضرات حيه مع المحاضر عن طريق زوم. اودمي نفسها بتطلع 5 شهادات لحضور ال5 كورسات. GPMA اكاديمي بتطلع شهادتين لحضور الكورسين بالاضافه الى شهاده المعتمد. اخيرا الاشتراك الان مفتوح لفتره محدوده وبسعر يعني زي ما انتم شايفين يعتبر يمكن ربع او خمس الاشياء الاخرى اللي يمكن متاحه. واللي يحب ان شاء الله يشارك معنا موجود اللينك، ممكن ترسلوا رساله بالواتساب او ايميل للانفو. One more time I would like to apologize for Mark for taking this opportunity to make this short announcement in Arabic language. But thank you again, and
thank you.
I hope that we join again. By the way, we have another webinar. Ali, if you announce for the upcoming webinar this week, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And the upcoming webinar, folks, is on August 15th, Saturday, same time, 4:30 p.m. It's on disrupting corporate learning during and post-COVID from Dr. Mansoor Kamil from Kurtuba Consulting Services, USA. So again, disrupting corporate learning during post-COVID-19 on August 15 at 4:30 p.m. KSA. You will be receiving most likely an email, and this will be announced on our website, www.gpmacademy.org. And those of you who have attended it successfully, you can always reach us back at info@gpmacademy.org with your name for attending the webinar, and we'll be happy to facilitate a certification of attendance for these webinars, for which you can coordinate with us via email, and to access the presentation copies in PDF formats. So with that note, and once again, a note of thanks to Professor Mark for taking the time to deliver this valuable presentation. We thoroughly enjoyed, and hope, sir, you thoroughly enjoyed delivering it too, and we'll be happy to keep you engaged for our future webinar series. With that note, I would like to end and conclude. You all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you have dialed in from. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much. I'm going to end this session.